Okay, so we have been covering Kurt Busiek and also George Perez's run on the Avengers. Here's the thing, because in the middle of their run, you actually had some different creative teams like come in for a short period of time to give those two guys a quick break. Like, for example, you had Jerry Ordway come in and give us a three-part storyline that took place right in the middle of the run done by Kurt Busiek and George Perez. Now, this storyline is really dealing with the Wrecking Crew because we saw them in our last video. For a quick second there, they were going on a rampage and then out of nowhere, they were teleported away. Well, we do kind of find out why as we get into the opening pages of issue number 16. And that would be the Doomsday Man. Now, the Doomsday Man has been around for a good while in Marvel Comics. Like, he first appeared back in Silver Surfer issue number 13 in 1969, I want to say. But when it comes to Doomsday Man, he was, like I said, a Silver Surfer villain, but also a Miss Marvel villain as well. And matter of fact, Miss Marvel played a very important role in this three-part storyline, and you'll see why here in a moment. But when it comes to Doomsday Man, he was created by the US military as a way to explore space. The problem was that the US military realized that how powerful this being truly was. And so their main goal was to just lock it away. They tried their best to keep it inside a concrete tomb. The problem was, again, it was just too powerful. It broke free. Now, Silver Surfer was able to stop it back then, and of course came back a second time for Miss Marvel to battle it, but now it's back for the third time. Now, when it comes to Doomsday Man, it was him who had teleport the Wrecking Crew away when he came to our last video. We also learned it was him who had helped the Wrecking Crew get out of prison, but also kind of gave him some power as well. Like, hey, you know what? Here's some energy to make you stronger, and now you're able to cause more havoc, but I have a job for you as well. That job is to find Miss Marvel. But here's the problem though, because for the Wrecking Crew, even though Doomsday Man said like, hey, go out there and find me Miss Marvel, they're not going to go after Miss Marvel. They're going to go after Captain Marvel instead. And so for the Wrecking Crew, that means heading over to New Orleans. Now, in the 1990s, you only had, I want to say, two Captain Marvels at this point, and we're close to getting our third Captain Marvel in Marvel Comics. But at this time, there only been two Captain Marvels, and the second one was Monica Rambeau. Now, when it comes to Monica Rambeau, she's no longer using the name Captain Marvel. She's now going by the name better known as Photon. Now, here's the problem though, because for the Wrecking Crew, all they were told was go after Miss Marvel. In their mind, that would be Captain Marvel, which is a female, which is Monica Rambeau. And so with the Wrecking Crew arriving in New Orleans, they begin the process of causing havoc as a way to bring her out into public to battle against her, but to also grab her and deliver her over to, well, their new leader. But this leads us over to the Avengers. Now, around this time in Marvel Comics, you had a Scarlet Witch kind of bring up a good idea for the Avengers. The idea of every single member of the team being allowed to kind of lead different things when it comes to the team, like training or meetings or even out in the field. But it's also the idea of trying to build bonds with one another, but to also make sure the Avengers are going through different training sessions as well together so that they can learn how to fight well together. Now, for the meeting, it's Justice's turn to actually lead the meeting. The problem with Justice is that he just freezes up. Like, he is so nervous because he is now talking in front of the Avengers, these heroes that he looked up to, like Captain America, the Scarlet Witch, Wonder Man. Now, Firestar, we see that she's kind of fitting in very easily. She's no longer frightened by the idea of being on the Avengers. But this also kind of opens the door to allow some old Avenger members to come back into this book as well. And what I mean by that is, while you have the Avengers just chilling out at Avengers Mansion, well, that is when you have the Black Knight arrive. But at the same time he arrives, you have Photon arrive as well. Monica Rambeau. Now, for Photon, she was just badly beaten by the Wrecking Crew. And so it's her coming to the Avengers for help. And so, of course, you do have the Avengers agree to help her, but she also remembers that they're back in New Orleans, the Wrecking Crew, which means they're going to most likely cause a whole lot of havoc to hopefully bring her back out in the public to battle her and to also capture her. And so she leaves the Avengers to go ahead and to hopefully do some kind of work against the Wrecking Crew while you have the Avengers catch up to her. And so that kind of leads into the rest of this chapter where you really do have the Avengers now fighting against, well, the Wrecking Crew. Now, here's the problem because with the Black Knight being there, with Photon being there, you kind of have the Avengers a tad bit thrown off. But it's also kind of the book reminding us that that was the major point for the Scarlet Witch. The idea this team has gone through so many changes in a very short period of time, with the Avengers being back into the main Marvel universe after Heroes Reborn. And so for the Avengers, they're kind of struggling against the Wrecking Crew. Now, it's not me saying the Wrecking Crew completely suck or anything, but it's the idea of the Avengers, this well-known team, this team of different heroes who have been around for a good while, should be able to handle the Wrecking Crew. Also, the Avengers, they have the numbers, but it's also, again, like I said, it's the fact the team is now working well together, but also other factors as well. Like, for example, Photon, her powers are not really doing damage to the Wrecking Crew. Instead, it's powering them up. You have innocent people just running all over the place. You got buildings falling all over the place. It's just complete mess at the moment. But you didn't have the Wrecking Crew being able to grab Monica Rambeau. Now, with them being able to grab Monica Rambeau, they didn't hit their button on the device that was given to them by their new leader. Like, hey, listen, we were told once we get her, let's get the heck out of there. But for the Doomsday Man, he realized that for the Wrecking Crew, they don't have the Marvel he's looking for. He wants Miss Marvel, the person that has Kree DNA inside of her. When it comes to Monica Rambeau, she does not have that Kree DNA. So just like that, he knows that they have grabbed the wrong Marvel character. So he has no choice but to go ahead and risk the chance of being located to just teleport Carol Danvers over to him. And let's not forget, when it comes to Carol Danvers, she was facing a drinking problem that got out of control, like way out of control. And so for Miss Marvel, she had officially left the Avengers before the Avengers had the chance to like fire her or do something about her. And so ever since then, she's kind of been on her own. And so she runs into Wasp. But while you have the two characters talking to one another, boop, just like that, there goes Miss Marvel, who was grabbed by the Doomsday Man, teleported away. But for the Wrecking Crew, they also do teleport away. Now, when they do teleport away for the Avengers, one, they have no idea that Carol Danvers had also been taken away. But two, it's also the fact like Monica Rambeau is now with the Wrecking Crew, and they have no idea where the Wrecking Crew had just went to. Now, as we dive into issue number 17, we kind of get into the idea of what exactly is going on with the Avengers. And let me explain. You see, as we get into the opening pages, we do learn that for the Wrecking Crew, at the very end of the last chapter, we were kind of left to believe that they were being teleported away by Doomsday Man. But in reality, they were being vaporized. Now, what happened next was you had a Scarlet Witch use her magic on the Wrecking Crew to hopefully keep them alive. But the problem was they were then teleported into another dimension. Now, this other dimension is well known because we actually had talked about this other world in this other dimension when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men. And that would be Polmacis. And I really hope I pronounced that correctly. Now, Polmacis is the actual home to another character known as Archon. Now, for Polmacis, it was this world in this other dimension that just glorified warfare. And so when Archon finally showed that he was the greatest warrior in being able to lead the entire planet, but especially the capital of this home world, better known as Imperion, he was, the ruler for a good while. But either way, when it comes to our Avengers, they had a few run-ins with Archon over the years, and so did the X-Men as well. But here comes the problem though. The Wrecking Crew has supposedly been teleported over into this other dimension thanks to the Scarlet Witch. But back on Earth, we do pick up with Iron Man and also, well, Justice. You see, in the last chapter, when it came to Justice, he was badly injured by, well, the Black Knight, technically, while they were fighting against the Wrecking Crew. But with his injuries, he had to stay behind. And so you had Iron Man basically volunteer to watch over Justice, but also call in Jane Foster, who is a doctor at this point, to give him a checkup. And she basically says, dude is sidelined until he is fully recovered. Now for Justice, he is not going to lie down that easily. But you did have Wasp and also Hank Pym arrive. And the reason why, because for Wasp, she saw what happened to Carol Danvers, who was taken away by Doomsday Man. And so now it's time for Iron Man and Wasp and also Giant Man to work together to hopefully find, well, Carol Danvers. Now, as we do switch over to Miss Marvel, this is where we kind of begin to learn what's going on with Doomsday Man and also why he wanted Carol Danvers so badly. You see, like I said earlier, when he came to Doomsday Man, the second time or the third time he reappeared in Marvel Comics was back in Miss Marvel Comics. Now, with that being said, when it came to the Doomsday Man, he was kind of being controlled by AIM, right? But also being controlled by one particular weapon maker, better known as Corwin Kerman. Now, when it came to Kerwin, what he tried to use was a Psyche Magnetron item that was created by the Kree, which of course back then kind of led into the creation of Miss Marvel, kind of gave her powers until you had Marvel kind of retcon a few things about her origin. But either way, when it came to her receiving her powers and that core of the device had exploded, we were kind of left to believe that Doomsday Man and also Corwin were kind of defeated. But in reality, what happened was AIM found Doomsday Man, but also found the Doctor as well. Now, before the story is able to continue, you have Carol Danvers being able to break free from the container that Doomsday Man kept her in, and they began to battle against one another. But luckily for Carol Danvers, she does get backup. That backup would be the rest of the Avengers who are on Earth at the moment, minus Justice. So Wasp, Hank Pym, and good old Iron Man as well. And so when they do arrive, you also have Carol Danvers begin to work with them to fight against Doomsday Man. Now for Carol, she's kind of wondering like, where is the rest of the Avengers? The problem is the rest of the Avengers are currently in another dimension. And really, speaking of those Avengers, we do learn very quickly here that while you do have the Avengers right now trying their best to find the Wrecking Crew, they also realize that Archon's home world, his capital city, has been completely, well, wrecked. Now, for the Avengers, they do find some members of the army that was being led by Archon. They also find Tundra as well. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to explain the whole origin of Tundra because it does kind of get a little bit messy when it comes to Marvel and timelines and all these different things. I do want to make videos where I do kind of sit down and explain like origins of different characters that most fans may or may not heard of, like Tundra, for example. But either way, you do have Tundra kind of explain that the Wrecking Crew had won, defeated Archon, but two kind of now ruled over the city. Now they're also kind of hinting at the possibility that Photon, Monica Rambeau, has now officially begun to help out the Wrecking Crew. Now we know that's not the case. What's happening right now is the Wrecking Crew is forcing her to basically use her powers on them because earlier, as we saw, when she does use her powers, she makes them even stronger. But getting back over to the Avengers on Earth, we do learn here for the Avengers, they're having a really hard time defeating Doomsday Man, which honestly makes a lot of sense because in the past, he was a dangerous foe. Now, when it comes to Justice, like we saw earlier, the dude was put on the sideline for his head injury. But the dude kind of felt bad that he was not really able to help out Carol Danvers. So he snuck out of Avengers Mansion, found the Avengers, and now trying to help the Avengers fight against Doomsday Man. Now, when it comes to Justice, he does use his psychic abilities on the actual Doomsday Man armor, really inside the armor. And the reason why, because we do learn here that there is somebody inside the actual robot. And that right there is a first, because in the past for Doomsday Man, he was technically just a robot going around causing havoc for different heroes in Marvel Comics. And that would be Corwin Corman. Now, we saw Corwin back in the Miss Marvel comics when Doomsday Man had reappeared in Marvel Comics. But is Corwin telling us that when it came to the Psyche Megatron device that was created by the Kree, when that device blew up, gave Miss Marvel her powers, but it also kind of affected the cells of Corwin as well, but also kind of infused him with the robot as well. And so for Doomsday Man, the actual robot, it was trying to find a replacement. And the reason why, because Corwin's body is decaying. And so for the Doomsday Man, the actual robot, it wanted Carol Danvers. And the reason why, because Carol Danvers' cells have been transformed over into, well, Kree cells. And so for Doomsday Man, it's kind of like, listen, this old man's gonna go. But that girl right there, she'll be a great replacement. But now with the robot being defeated and also, well, Corwin being defeated, you didn't have the Avengers being able to go back home. But the story's not done yet. Because let's not forget, for the Wrecking Crew, they had officially taken over Imperium City, but also keeping Archon as their, well, prisoner as well. We also see at the very end of this page that Steve Rogers is now officially a prisoner as well. But as we dive into Avengers issue number, well, 18, we're now picking up with the idea of the Wrecking Crew kind of telling us how they were able to take over, well, Archon's, well, palace. And we learned that right after they did arrive in this dimension, they were confronted by Greybeard. Now, Greybeard was kind of like the scientist who was a servant for Archon. And originally, he was kind of like the right-hand man for Archon when it came to different problems. But at this point, it does seem like he was trying to remove Archon, but also put someone else in place of power, but also kind of controlled them as well. Because when the Wrecking Crew had arrived to this reality, this dimension, he worked very quickly to make sure that Photon, would not be able to transform out of her energy form so that she could still constantly be used as a way to feed energy over to the Wrecking Crew. Now, at the end of the last chapter, we had saw that somebody was able to capture Steve Rogers. The rest of the Avengers are still free at the moment, but we do meet the great soldier that was technically able to go out of their way to capture Steve Rogers for the Wrecking Crew. But outside the palace, we do see the rest of the Avengers in this dimension has been able to build up an army of great soldiers and children as well. But I guess children warriors or pilots technically, because they are flying these aircrafts. But either way, for Black Knight, he was able to go out of his way to build up an army of soldiers to follow Tundra and the rest of the Avengers to break into the palace to hopefully bring down the Wrecking Crew. Now, once you do have the army that the Avengers have put together to start attacking the actual palace, we do learn two things here. The first is that the great soldier that had went out of his way to supposedly capture Steve Rogers is actually Steve Rogers. But the person who's pretending to be Steve Rogers as a prisoner is, well, no other than Vision. And so you have Vision being able to find Archon and then being able to, well, free him.
Now, we're also getting reminded that in the past, there was this point in time where the Scarlet Witch and also Archon were kind of love interests for one another. And the reason why I'm saying that, because for Archon, he was told earlier that his lover, Tundra, his current lover, had been killed off. That he is now officially defeated as a great warrior, but also a great leader and a great lover. And so you have Vision push Archon outside of his prison cell, where you had the Scarlet Witch there. And once he sees the Scarlet Witch, he's kind of like, this is a woman I used to love in the past. And with her being here, it does something for me. Now, before you have the two characters possibly kiss one another, Wonder Man, Scarlet Witch, current boo, and also Tundra, Archon's current boo as well, both appear. Now, for Archon to see Tundra there, he now knows that he was lied to, but also kind of gives him more motivation to go out of his way to hopefully bring down the Wrecking Crew. We also see Black Knight and also Firestar kind of work things out with one another. And what I mean by that statement is that because in the earlier chapter, when it came to Justice getting hurt, it was kind of Black Knight's fault as well. And for Firestar, she hated Black Knight in this entire storyline. It's the two of them coming together and fully understanding that the Black Knight did not do it on purpose, but at the same time, he does kind of love the idea of Firestar and Justice being on the team, because for Justice, he realized that he is somebody who's just trying to fit in. And for Black Knight himself, he realizing that he's somebody still trying to prove that he can fit in. But either way, you have Firestar realize that she overreacted, she forgives him, but we're also kind of getting the idea of the possibility of Black Knight kind of liking Firestar. And so this kind of leads into a very quick ending here for this three-part storyline, because when we do switch back over to the Avengers attacking the palace to hopefully bring down the Wrecking Crew, you also have Monica Rambeau be free. The problem is that she can't switch out of her energy form. She's kind of being forced to feed energy over to the Wrecking Crew. But she also realized if she's able to just continue to feed them, sooner or later, they will no longer be able to absorb any more power from her. Kind of like, blowing out a fuse by overpowering something. But either way, once you do have Monica Rambeau do that, you didn't have the Wrecking Crew being able to be easily defeated by the Avengers. And so once you had the Avengers, defeat the Wrecking Crew, you didn't have the Avengers head back home, where of course they find out what happened to the rest of the Avengers who were on Earth. Now, here is the closing part of this storyline, because with the Avengers being able to be back together now on Earth, we then switch over to Hank Pym. And when it came to Kurt Busiek and George Perez, before they took their small break before this three-part storyline, they also kind of set up the idea of the return of Ultron as well. And so we see Ultron making his move and going after Hank Pym. But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see you next time. Later.